All right, it is 11 a.m. I will call this special town council meeting to order. Welcome those who are here in person and tuned in online. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Reed, Mr. Dwyer,
Here.
Mr. Parrott,
Here.
Mr. Yolen,
Here.
Mr. Hunter.
Here.
Mr. Hardy.
Here.
Thank you. We are here today in relation to the conversation we've had for the last two meetings. Last meeting, there was a motion to amend the employee handbook to phase out the health insurance payment in lieu of coverage, and so we have a resolution in front of us as a result of that vote. I would open the floor up for a motion to adopt or for any discussion at this time.
So I need to bend your ear for just a few minutes. So since our last meeting, I've been thinking a lot about what transpired and taking care of our people. So as leaders of an organization, we need to ensure that our employees feel valued, supported, and have their needs met. So this can lead to increased productivity, loyalty, job satisfaction, and us here will be foolish to think that this decision today will not lose one or two, or maybe even more, valuable employees if we move forward with this. So before we move forward, I'd just like to turn back the clock a little bit and give you some information on some presentations that we've had just over the last year in reference to our budget and our financial status. So just hear me out for just a second. So at our February 7th work session of 2024, we had Davenport present to us a financial review looking at our initial bond rating. So our revenue exceeded expenditures for the past 5 years. In reserve, we were presented the fact that reserve had grown over the last 5 years as well, and our unassigned fund balance grew from $688,000 to $3.9 million. So in terms of debt, we had approximately $3.4 million in debt that we were told would be paid off in 5 years, okay, to include $1.4 million that would be paid off in 2024. $1 million would be paid off in 2025, and by the year 2027 and 28, we were told by Davenport we will have paid off most of our debt. So that was a status exactly 1 year ago, 13 months ago, that we were told, okay? That same night, Julie Moore, our financial manager, presented to us a financial report from December of 23, which was halfway through our fiscal budget year, and revenue compared to the prior year was up as well, okay? So for expenses, we were well below the 50% mark of the budget, which was positive. So she presented a positive financial status to us at that time. So we moved forward to February 4th of 2025, and Julie presented the December finance report. This was our 6th month of the budget this year. And when we look at the revenue budget, our actual revenue was below the budgeted revenue. And that was due, she said, to seasonal patterns that impacted our year-to-date collection percentages. And she explained about the airport fund. She explained about the general funds being below years of revenue because last year we recognized the ABM lease proceeds and that we didn't have any of those proceeds this year. So she talked about the airport funds having just less projects going on this year. And she said, when you look at expenses to budget, overall total expenses are currently below the 6-month mark. So we didn't give any questions. We didn't even ask any questions at that point. Everything seemed to be fine. So on March 5th of 2025, we have the insurance representative come here that tells us that we fall below 100 employees and that we're going to see an increase in our insurance by, what is it, 12%? Okay. And that we only have 97 employees. But if you think about this, think about in the past of that past year. If you remember correctly, we didn't fill Mike Gaines' position. We didn't fill Bill Caldwell's position. We left a planner open. That's 3 positions right there. And we knew this as a council. Did we not know this? This is on us. We need to be held accountable for this. We don't need to be throwing our employees under the bus by cutting the salary. Well, not salary, in lieu of. This is on us. I mean, we should have been taking better account of what was going on. So here's my question. So all of this good stuff is coming to us from a year ago, and then all of a sudden in March, we're in this budget deficit? What? Am I the only one that's not seeing that there's a problem? What's going on? Am I that stupid? I mean, I don't understand. And now we're just targeting these employees? So we are accountable for this. We as a council body should have been on top of this. We shouldn't let our employees suffer because we missed the mark. It's on us. It's not on them. So now council's going to jump on this and make such an impactful decision against our employees without further looking into this budget. So this is what I'm saying. We as a council, we owe our employees in the community to postpone this vote and be transparent with this proposed budget and dig into this collaboratively more at a next work session. There's no hurry. Listen, there's no hurry. I have seen us work together at a retreat. I mean, we are brilliant together, honestly. I mean, our minds flow collaboratively. It flows really well. We can fix this, honestly. So we can come up with a better solution to this. So thank you for listening to me.
I'd like to add to that just a teeny bit. I've been on the fence about all of this myself, and I don't want to lose employees, and we don't know, as Tommy said the other night, we don't know that employees didn't know about this stipend before they came on. We just don't know. I mean, they may have been told, they may not have been told, they may have heard it from a friend, and it made a difference as to their employment. But for me, this 1.3 million deficit is rough. I did request a copy of the proposed budget, and I know we had to have a consensus, and I'm kind of looking for that. I'd like to see this $1.3 million proposed budget. I know it's an Excel spreadsheet, and I know it may take a little bit to cut, a day or two to put it in a form, but get it out to us where we can take a day or two and actually compare it to last year's and the year before and see where our big changes are. Because even with a short synopsis explanation, and even, and I sat down with Julie and I kind of got a pretty good idea, and because she's awesome, but I still would like to see where we went from, and I'm going to say it just like it has been said before, where we went from sunshine and roses to a $1.3 million deficit. So I'm with Sally on the holding up and taking a little deeper dive into this and having it be, as transparent as possible.
Well, Ms. Amos, I appreciate what you said, but I can't take the blame of counting each employee every month and every day. And if we lost 3 employees, we still had 130-some employees. So in reference to having the people on the insurance, we should have been notified from our representative. They should have notified us prior to, instead of the 11th hour we being told that we were under 100 employees. So I can't take the blame for that. And I've been on that level, whereas they do make that phone call. They do let you know ahead of time. They should have let the town know ahead of time, before September, that we may be on the fence of not having enough employees, so our rate may drop. So that's where the 12% comes from. I've been directly involved with that for years. So I can't say that it fell on us, because none of us here comes down here each day and asks, how many employees do we have? No, at each month, we don't ask Scott, how many employees do we have? Mr. Davis, how many employees do we have? So that, I have to disagree with you on. In reference to the budget that we haven't seen yet, that Mr. Davis has told us about, there's a number of things that y'all are forgetting about that we're adding on to this new budget. When that only position we may add on, I believe, is the fire department, because we have to have that 24-hour coverage. The other things, I don't think we're adding on the capital improvement things. That one of the biggest things that is out there that we're adding for the public's purpose, in my opinion, is for the recreational part, which that's $300,000 roughly. But if we don't give the public anything, and we're talking about raising a tax rate proposal, they're not going to feel like they're getting anything.
Mr. Davis?
I'll call on Ms. Moore to what Ms. Amos commented on. What the comment that she's talking about is the budget as a whole. What we're talking about here today is just the general fund portion of the budget. So those are not apples to apples. We're talking, what she said from Davenport is a total operational budget, which is the general fund, the street maintenance fund, water fund, sewer fund, and the bus and the airport. The only fund that we're talking about primarily with this, there are a few people that fit in the category that get this in those enterprise funds. Majority of this that we're talking about, the deficit is in the general fund, not the overall budget. So that is not accurate comments of what Davenport was presenting compared to what we're talking about in this scenario, in this meeting.
Yeah, so another thing is each of the other funds, the street maintenance, the airport, transportation, and water and sewer, they can use prior year fund balance. So say they have a good year and they had some leftover revenue and it goes into their fund balance. But when we go to do the budget, we are allowed to pull that in and say we had this year, and I can tell you so far in all of the enterprise funds, when you see the budget, you're going to see that we're using prior year fund balance because we have more expenses this year in those budgets than we do revenue. But we're allowed to do that, whereas our financial policy says that we cannot do that for our general fund. So basically, our revenues stay consistent going forward to 26, but we just have more expenses this year. And those are the things that we gave you in the memo that I discussed with John, the details of some of the things that are just, we have to have because they're like, they're just new occurrences for this upcoming year, and they'll probably continue. So, and they have, and your revenue and your expenses have to balance, and so that's why we have this deficit. And I can't, you're talking about that fund balance. If we have reserves, I can't use that because the policy that the council passed says that you can't use that.
And you don't want to use fund reserves because that's what we use if we do hit some type of recession or some type of catastrophic event.
And I think that
you gotta remember that part of this budget that's coming up, and I do plan to present the budget on our work session in April. That budget will be based on what you do here today, if you do, and the proposed tax rate that'll be at public hearing on the following week, the 9th of April. It balances. It also includes $16 million in general obligation bonds. That's revenue and expense. That's for a ladder truck. That's for the renovation of the firehouse. That also is leases that that 16 million isn't, but there's also in there revenue and expense so that we can continue services like we have in the town of Farmville. That's by replacing 20 to 30-year-old dump truck, 5 police cars, a whole slew of things that you'll see in that budget. But that is something that this council has committed to in the past for us to maintain services.
And I just wanted to add on the fund balance, the state says that you should have at least 3 to 4 months of of expenses in your fund balance. So that's another reason why you don't want to use your fund balance. You don't want to deplete it down. So,
If we do that, everything we worked for the GFOA award for our audit goes in the toilet.
I will say, I take some caution at the prospect that one action is taking care of the employees. When you look at the totality of actions taken, $10,000 in raises over the last 3 fiscal years for the employees is taking care of the employees. There's a quarter of folks impacted by this in lieu of, which is a benefit, not a salary. The other 3/4 of employees, we're covering the entire 12% increase in health insurance as a town. We're taking care of them in that fashion. This in lieu of payment is an isolated thing in a lot of ways. It's a conversation that can be had outside the confines of the budget, just based off merit. Is it something that should exist in the generous capacity that it currently exists? Or should it be reduced? The council moved last meeting to implement a plan to reduce it in a 3-year time frame. That request to adopt that resolution still stands in front of us. But it's at council's pleasure whether or not a motion is raised to move on it and there's a vote and we see where that goes, or not.
I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the resolution 2025-0301, amending the employee handbook to phase out the health insurance payment in lieu of coverage.
Second.
Motion and second. Any additional discussion at this time? Not hearing any. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Yolen,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
No.
Mrs. Amos.
No.
On a vote of 4 to 2, the motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Is there any other additional business to come before council at this time? Any additional comments? Not hearing any, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
No
moved.
move.
All in favor? Ayes have it. Thank you.